Is oral sex allowed in Islam? Marriage and love are never the objective of life for Muslims. Loving Allah is what matters. Loving God, loving humanity, is what matters. Fulfillment of loneliness is often found in God's love rather than humans. Many people marry and then get heartbroken. Many people stay single and are in love with their Creator. God is their everlasting friend. Even if someone finds marriage to be necessary, he or she should not convince everyone to marry just because we think it is right. Maryam, the daughter of Imran, was single. Asiya has the worst husband in the world. It was close to not having a husband. Yet Allah loved them the most. According to another Sheikh al-Hadith, Ahmad Omar Sharif, who had taught Hadith for over 50 years, indulgence in any sort of excessive pleasures is counterproductive for human beings. Believers were not sent to this world for enjoying luxuries. We were created to worship and obey Allah and His Messenger. Our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, lived by this principle, and even though he could have become very wealthy by doing a lot of business, he chose to remain in poverty until his death. The Prophet did not lead a life of luxury or grandeur. Once when questioned by Angel Jibreel if he wanted a mountain of gold to follow him wherever he went, he had replied that he would rather that Allah provides him with just enough for a day so that he may thank him. Then the next day, he would like that Allah keeps him hungry so that he may supplicate to him for sustenance. Due to our own indulgence, and following the practice of the non-Muslims, there are thousands of Saudi Arabian youths, Kuwait youngsters, Qatari men and women, elderly entrepreneurs from Oman and Bahrain, and even scientists from Indonesia and Malaysia, are now being most severely tortured in CIA's Bush-era interrogation programs, that are until today, operating in secrecy in many European countries. In addition to the Guantanamo naval base in Cuba, there are black sites located in Afghanistan, Lithuania, Romania, Poland, Thailand, Bulgaria, Norway, and even in Canada, where hundreds of innocent men, women, and Arab children are taken and electrocuted and sexually assaulted by American, British, and European guards. So let everyone be religious, without focusing on love for spouses and obsession with happiness in this life. We were created for the afterlife, not for finding happiness and love here in this world. The obsession with love for humans is sometimes the reason many women and men become completely broken both emotionally and physically. We came to this world to love our Creator and serve those people who are helpless and in far more worse situations than us. We came to this world to help every orphan, heal the sick, and ease the pain of refugees and poor people, and to serve humanity. I don't really understand these people's obsession with physical and sexual relationships. Even if it's legal, this is a luxury, and any luxury people indulge in too much, they suffer severely for it. Even if someone eats too much sugar, they get diabetes. If someone eats too much fat, they get heart disease. If someone had too much physical relationships, still, it takes people's heart away from Allah. However, in my personal experience, I've seen dozens of people who were too indulgent with their wife sexually, which is completely allowed in Islam, but I've seen them go through the bitterest pain and suffering. I think, with all the Muslims getting insulted and suffering around the world, Muslims should really stop using religion as an excuse to constantly talk about sex styles and their desires, and spend their time crying to Allah for their brothers and sisters who are getting tortured, raped, and killed in China and Myanmar as we speak, and while the fate of Muslims in Europe and America are hanging by a thin thread. It is wrong to get into the obsession of fooling yourself saying that sex is sunnah and an act of faith, when most of us are probably not following 70% of the Prophet's sunnah, like staying awake at night in prayer and starving for days or fighting for Allah. It is like eating sugar all day saying it is sunnah to eat sweets, when the Prophet ate sweets only once or twice in his lifetime. Numerous Iraqi and Afghan prisoners who were tortured sexually and forced to eat feces by their American guards admitted that before their arrests, they used to have a lot of sex with their wives. Some of them admitted that after watching some European pornography, they experimented with new style of sex, within the halal boundaries, but now they realized that because of those indulgences, Allah made them prisoners in American secret prisons where their children were sodomized before their eyes, and American soldiers assaulted their wives in order to force them sign false confessions. Keep in mind that every time you indulge in sexual pleasures, think you will get punished severely for it unless you are already shedding blood and sweat in the path of Allah like the companions of the Prophet and all Sahabas. They did not spend their time exploring ways to have sex. The Prophet's companions stayed away from their wives for 20 or 30 years at a time, in faraway nations, trying to make other people Muslims. There were Sahabas who never consummated marriage after the wedding night because they were called on to help Muslims. If you don't want to get tortured and abused in black sites and Gitmo, then please avoid overindulge in sexual activities. Think for every act of pleasure how much pain you will get in return. Trust me, the thousands of innocent Muslims in Guantanamo Bay Prison and American black site jails are constantly being raped and forced to have the most disgusting sex with other inmates. Many freed Muslims also said their wives and children were kidnapped along with them and raped by the guards until they died from the abuse. If sex interests Muslims that much, then there are hundreds of black sites where American guards are waiting to commit the most vile acts on prisoners, more than anyone could want in a lifetime. It doesn't matter if you are innocent or not, the thousands of Muslim and Arab and Pakistani prisoners in U.S. jails were all framed for crimes they never committed. Certain European Christian mercenaries blew up the World Trade Center and framed innocent Muslim youths for it, and they are languishing in American and British jails. They are being sexually assaulted constantly, and they are forbidden from fasting and praying and forced to make pornography videos for the guards. All those torture methods are legal under non-Muslim and American laws because suspected terrorists have no rights under the Constitution. I have spoken to a few of the released Muslim prisoners, and they all swore they have no desire to engage in sexual acts with their spouses, halal or otherwise. They had enough sex and abuse for a lifetime. They had been assaulted by the guards thousands of times. If Muslims try to indulge too much in sexual pleasures, then they are definitely going to be facing such deadly consequences in this world. Allah will not give us Jannah for free. People who are not Muslims always have free sex and eat whatever haram food they desire, but they are going to end up in hellfire for not believing in Allah. Muslims can't expect to go to heaven and also indulge in all the enjoyment of this world. When Muslims get involved in worldly pleasures, they begin to face trials and tribulations in this world, because if Allah plans to give you paradise in the hereafter, He will definitely make you experience some hardship. The Prophet Muhammad, who was the most sinless person in the world, did not have food in his house for days. He had patches in his clothes, and his household could not afford to buy enough oil to light a lamp. In Muslim history, whenever Muslims became involved in luxury and constantly looked for beautiful women to marry and were becoming intimate with their wives, they suffered terribly. One example is what happened in Greece, where thousands of Muslim Turkish civilians lived peacefully with their Christian and Jewish neighbors, but many of the Muslim men married numerous Greek women, and they spent a lot of time enjoying time with their second or third wives. Soon, they became less concerned with religion and became more concerned about fulfilling the marital rights of their wives. While the Muslims remained busy having sexual relations with their wives, the Greek priests, leaders, and even bishops encouraged the Greek Christians to kill and torture all Muslims in their country. According to historian William St. Clair, during the beginning of the Greek Revolution, over 40,000 Turkish men, women and children were killed by their Greek neighbors in a few weeks of slaughter and violence. Thousands of Turkish women and girls were raped and tortured by their Christian neighbors, and anyone who was of Turkish descent or had a Muslim name were killed deliberately, without qualm or scruple. Due to constant hate towards the Muslims in Greece, the Christians continued to carry out atrocities toward the Turkish civilian population inhabiting the Peloponnese, and hundreds of Turks were murdered in different places in the country. When many Muslims surrendered to the murdering mob, Greek revolutionaries massacred the Turkish civilians in the towns and betrayed them and broke their promise. As a result, nearly the entire Muslim population in Greece were wiped out. During that time, Greek Christians also cut off food supply for the Muslims there, so the Turks in Monemvasia became weak from hunger and finally opened the gates of their city and laid down their weapons. But the Christians burst into the town and started murdering all the Muslims who had not yet reached to the shore or those who had chosen to stay in the town. Those Muslims who were on the ships were stripped of their clothes and beaten to death. This was the result of those Muslims who enjoyed having excessive sexual relations with their spouses, even though it was a halal, and they considered it to be an act of worship.